Welcome to a brand new episode of the Same Business, Different Day podcast. I'm your host, Zeke Corley, and I'm thrilled to bring you yet another captivating and insightful conversation. Allow me to introduce my esteemed co-host and partner in storytelling, one of the premier video storytellers in all of San Diego County, Chris Ryan, owner of Chris Ryan Video. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Good to be back. Thank you for having me. That was a great introduction.
You deserve it, man. Our guest today is Casey Castillo, a man that embodies altruism both in his personal and professional endeavors. Throughout the next hour, we look forward to gaining valuable insights from Casey. But as we always do about this time, we're going to start at the beginning. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our guest today, Casey Castillo.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate that introduction. That was a great introduction.
Of course, man. And it's just the beginning, because the second introduction is going to be amazing, because I can't wait to tell everybody what you actually are doing in life now, but it starts at the beginning. It all started somewhere for everybody, right? It does. Where were you born?
So I was born in a sleepy small town in Central California called Porterville, California, San Joaquin Valley. Great place to grow up. To ride your bike anywhere. I did a whole lot of that. Played lots of sports growing up, formal, informal, in front yards or backyards. And that was my life, and I loved every part of it.
Now, where is that, like central, is that like farm town?
So yeah, absolutely. It's agriculture town. It's right in the middle of Fresno and Bakersfield. Okay. You have to want to get there. To get there, you're lost.
Or get lost.
You're lost, or you're heading up to the Sequoias. You can pass through Porterville going up to the Sequoias, which is how most people know about Porterville. And growing up, it was probably about 30,000 population. Now it's probably double that.
Okay. And what do you think attracted more of the population there, or is it just people having kids there?
Well, farming. So agriculture was a big attraction, and still is, and it's what brought my father and his family to the San Joaquin Valley, and now it has some struggles. There's some poverty issues. There are our lack of jobs, but farming is still a big part of what happens there and part of the culture. Did
you do any farming yourself?
Kind of. So my dad was very entrepreneurial.
Okay.
And he owned citrus at one point in his career. And so there were nights where I would go out. That's how I learned to drive, in a Ford F-150 on a ranch. Midnight, I could shine the headlights on him, and he could turn the water on each row. So I would follow along with the car, shining the headlights where they needed to be. So that's a little bit of farming in my history. Not a lot, but it's how I learned to drive.
I like it.
11 years old, 12 years old, behind an F-150.
How fun is that?
Yeah. First time I ever saw an underage driver, I guess I was probably about 10, and we were visiting family in Arkansas.
Okay.
My mom's side of the family. And the kid's like, we're going to the store, and he couldn't be more than 13, right?
That happens.
He taught me how to ride a horse. He taught me how to chew tobacco. I got real sick on that. But he was driving us around. This was like this. I mean, but you have all that space in Arkansas. You know.
That's the kind of stuff you see in Porterville. You might even see a tractor or some horses on the street too. But again, great place to grow up. I enjoyed every second of it, and it's what I hoped for my family. When I was young, that our kids would have space and have a community like that to grow up in.
I love it. Did you have, you remember your aspirations, what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, early on, I was probably like most kids. I either wanted to be in the NFL or the NBA. Okay. Then when, I realized that wasn't going to happen. I think I was probably a weird kid. I thought I was going to be a marriage and family therapist when I was a young teenager. And I liked human behavior, liked the idea of helping families. And so that's, in my early years, what I thought I would end up doing.
You ever pursue any of that? Did you sit the dolls around the room and talk to them individually?
So kind of. So my first nonprofit job was in the Inland Empire in Riverside, and I ended up working for a foster care agency, but they had counseling centers. It's when I was still thinking about, I was trying to make a decision about graduate school, still thinking about that route, and I got to see firsthand what that looked like. And so, yeah, I mean, there were some times I thought about it. Getting real world experience was really helpful in making that determination and deciding what I thought was, best for me and my family and where I thought my strengths were. So yeah, it's something I thought about. I looked a little bit into it. I got to see it in action and then decided my talents were elsewhere.
Yeah.
So with an aspiration like that, did you yearn to break out of the small town, or did you think you'd stay there and develop, a presence where you felt like, you were home?
Well, I didn't really have a choice. I love my parents, and education was very important to them. I was the first one in my family to go to college. And I think my parents, especially my dad, felt like staying in a small town was just going to be trouble for me. So I knew from an early age, and my parents didn't give me a choice. You were leaving at 18, you were going to college. And so I just always knew that that's what it was going to be like. And so my future in that respect was pretty clear.
Was the high school experience tough, or were you pushing right through? You knew you were headed to college, obviously, but...
I loved high school. I went to a large high school, and I played a lot of sports, sport every season. And so my attention was typically on sports. I love competition, and that's what really got me through high school. Great friends, I was excited about what college was going to mean for me, but I lived in the now and enjoyed all parts of high school.
We're talking like behavior studies, right? Or like sociology, study of human behavior and all. And one of the things that intrigues me is something that you just said, and we hear it a lot on the show, right? Where you were the first one to go to college in your family.
Yeah.
I wonder what that pressure is like. I wonder how relieving that is, to the families, like we finally got one kind of thing. I mean, and I'm not too far removed from that, but I just wonder from a firsthand standpoint.
There was pressure. So my dad's Mexican, my mom's white. My dad was born in a small town in southern Texas, and was raised by grandparents. Grandparents moved him at a young age to California because they're farm workers. And so they traveled up and down California based on crops. And my grandfather had a friend or compadre that said, Porterville's a good spot. You should take a look at it. And that's how they ended up in Porterville. So both my mom and dad came from families that didn't have a lot of money. My parents were amazing, very driven, incredible work ethic, and have been hugely successful. But it was very important to them, and I knew from an early age that education was going to be my route. And part of that pressure was the responsibility I felt that grandparents and mom and dad sacrificed, went through tougher times so that I would have more opportunities. And I didn't want to be a dope and let anybody down. So that was the pressure that I felt.
I appreciate you answering that, because it really is intriguing to me. It's like, and part of your answer is very important too, which is that we're not talking about families that aren't necessarily successful. We're not talking about families that aren't necessarily hardworking. We're just talking about families that don't have the higher education. Yeah. Right? And so those folks are working to get their kids to get to college.
Exactly. I mean, I think what they see are it's what my grandparents saw, coming to the United States and specifically coming to California. Their vision was there were more opportunities, and they were willing to do whatever it took so their family had those opportunities. Yeah. And that's me, ultimately, I would have more opportunities. Again, not that they weren't successful because they worked hard, but they did see that education was a path that offered more opportunities.
I love it. I love it. How about early jobs?
I did a lot of things. We had a family that owned a grocery store, close family friend, and so did some bagging of groceries. Okay. I learned very quickly not to put the bread at the bottom. some nice older lady helped me with that.
No.
So I did some of that. I was a lifeguard early on, and in college, I worked graveyard shift in our college library, which also was an interesting experience. Worked till 4 a.m. And that was, over a summer, tough getting on schedule.
Yeah. I bet.
Well, I guess you're learning about how to manage your sleep and, get back into class and all of that as well, though.
So the trick was I would usually take a break around 1 a.m. and I would be so tired, I just ready to, I would try to eat, maybe read, some books or magazines. Exhausted though, get back to working for the next couple hours, drive home, get to the house at 4:30, ready to go to bed, and I was wide awake. I would lay down for an hour or so and say, you know what, I give up. I'm going to get up and make some breakfast or something. So
that's
your body finally figures it out. But I remember those early months.
It reminds me of radio. I had that 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, man, and just right home. Just go get breakfast.
Just get your day going at that point.
I mean, the sun's coming up.
Yeah, I've had that too.
And then that led ultimately in college. Maybe my first kind of grown up or professional job was working for a financial institution.
Okay.
And so I worked for a bank, and that was really, and I did that in college and also in graduate school. And what was nice about that is I really was introduced to a lot of different people and businesses. Great examples of businesses that were very successful, but I also saw businesses that were struggling. And I made a lot of and built a lot of relationships. And one of those relationships is what ultimately led to my first nonprofit job.
I love it.
That's where I got my start in the nonprofit world.
Hello friends, I'm Joe Samo. I'm an attorney in San Diego, and I'm the host of Run It By My Lawyer. It's a great podcast where you will learn a lot about the law, and it is very entertaining if I say so myself. And you could get it for free anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can follow us on Instagram at Run It By My Lawyer.
Welcome to I Like Beer, the podcast, where we discuss great beers and the stories that go with them. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm your host, Jeff.
We're friends who love good beer and telling stories, so we turned it into a podcast. Teachers by day, beer drinkers by night. Lucky enough to live in North County, San Diego, California, beer mecca within a beer mecca. Please pour yourself a beer, pull up a bar stool, and join us. Check us out on Instagram and Twitter. Go to the website, ilikebeerthepodcast.com. We'd love to keep drinking, but right now, we got to run.
I'm interested. I want to go back just a little bit. First of all, where was the college? Where'd you go to undergrad?
Undergrad was in Provo, Utah, Brigham Young University, BYU.
Okay, awesome. And what were you studying?
So studied a few things, but psychology was one of them because I thought I was going to be a marriage and family therapist.
Sure. Yeah. Did you, now this job that you had working with the bank, did you pursue it? I mean, there were obviously on-campus jobs that you could have done, right? But were you just looking for a financial institution to work for?
I like the idea. I enjoy finance. It's one of the things I looked at in graduate school. I like finance. And it was also a job that offered a lot of flexibility. And at that point, I was going back to graduate school and needed some flexibility. So they were great with my schedule, something I can continue to do while I was back in school. And again, I liked being around. I work primarily with business customers, and I like that relationship, and I like learning about that.
Same. You know, the insurance brokerage that my dad and I have, you know, we talk about the differences between working with the personal clients and the business clients. The business clients, they have things to do. You know, they're not calling you every day like, what if, you know, I got in a little fender bender in a parking lot kind of thing. What if my aunt drives the car? Is it okay? You know, that kind of thing. But as a business owner, it's like, I need to make sure I'm covered so I can go back to business, you know?
Yeah.
But I really like that. You got to deal with business owners early on.
I did, and many of them are great examples. And then, you know, I found early on too that you could be a good example or even a bad example, but it's still something to learn from, right? What not to do or what to do. The world's about making or building relationships.
Sure.
And it was, again, I was very young, and it was an opportunity to figure that out and start to understand what that's about.
Where was grad school?
Grad school was in the Inland Empire. My wife actually got into grad school first, which is why we moved to Riverside. And she was going to UCR, and then I ended up going to Cal State San Bernardino. UC Riverside didn't have a day program, an MBA program, and I was working full time, and so I chose Cal State for the night program. So some of those days were long, working full time, and then 2 or 3 nights a week from 4 to 10 o'clock in classes. But I was young and eager.
You didn't have kids at that time?
Well, I had our first child during about partway through.
Okay.
So I had a young child at home through about half of that.
Okay, I think it is time for the reveal because I really want to hear that. A lot of what you have been talking about in your upbringing and your focus seems intentional, and it kind of leads us down the direction to where you are now. And where you are now is so special, and anybody who's really paying attention will understand what I mean when I reveal for you. Today we're honored to have a truly inspiring guest, reintroducing Casey Castillo, now the CEO of the Jacobs and Cushman San Diego Food Bank, the 4th largest independent food bank in the country. For over a decade, Casey has dedicated his life to the noble cause of combating hunger and poverty within the San Diego community. Guiding the food bank since 2008, Casey and his team have tirelessly served an astounding 400,000 individuals each month. Through their unwavering commitment and compassion, they have touched the lives of seniors on fixed incomes, struggling lower-income families, and poverty-stricken children. Not limited to just providing meals, the San Diego Food Bank also operates as a full-fledged diaper bank, recognizing the essential needs of families and well-being of their little ones. Moreover, they ensure access to vital period supplies, shedding light on the often overlooked challenges faced by individuals in need. Through their remarkable efforts, they provide not only nourishment, but also restore dignity to those facing adversity. As we approach September, designated as San Diego Hunger Awareness Month, our conversation with Mr. Castillo couldn't be more timely. So welcome, Casey. Really appreciate it.
Again, appreciate that. Again, wonderful introduction. We're always grateful to talk about the San Diego Food Bank and the work that's being done. And it's also an opportunity to thank the community because that's how we're able to do that and meet those needs. And we are grateful for that support.
Yeah. Give us a little statistics for us, because I know you're a numbers guy. So, I mean, we're talking about 400,000 families or 400,000 people per month that you're feeding. What can you give us in terms of the numbers of those that are really out there affected?
Pretty mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yes.
And that is a big number. Right now, at least the most recent study is that there are about 750,000 food and nutrition insecure people in San Diego County. So that's a very big number as well.
Right.
As you point out, we're serving about 400,000 each month. That changes on a monthly basis.
Sure.
The other kind of mind-blowing figure is that about 250,000 of those are children. I gave a tour this morning to a family, and they had a grandchild that she was 11 with them. And she was asking great questions, but I had an opportunity. She asked about how many kids were hungry in San Diego County, so I gave her that figure. And one of the things I pointed out was that these are kids then that you're going to school with. At 250,000 people, these are kids that she knows, maybe sitting next to in class.
Yeah.
And I think that was pretty eye-opening for her. I know it's eye-opening for me. And it's why we, as a San Diego Food Bank, are out there. And as you mentioned, this is Hunger Awareness Month, and it's an opportunity to communicate to the community about the things that are going on in San Diego, and also ways that they can help if they desire to.
Wow.
So for Hunger Awareness Month, you know, every month has certain things where it's spotlight. But hunger is with us all the time. And if you were able to make somebody aware of one thing that you think may either dispel a myth or, you know, what would be one thing that you think you'd want everybody to know during this month that might kind of shift their perception?
That's a great question. One of the misconceptions about food banking is that we primarily serve the unhoused or the homeless.
Yeah.
You mentioned the 400,000 figure number monthly that we're serving. Most of those are considered the working poor. In a recent study that we had SDSU conduct, 73% of our respondents had either full-time or part-time jobs. 3/4 of those 400,000 people that we're serving are working, but they're still struggling to put food on the table. So that's a misconception I would like to counter. I want people to know that we're serving individuals and families that are working, they're doing everything they can to get by, and they still need a little extra help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, it really kind of goes back to the kids and the conversation that you were having this morning with the grandmother. I mean, just imagine how those kids are affected in school, right? Concentration, you know, you're in there hungry. You're just trying to figure out where your next meal is coming from. We had Vanessa Ruiz in here, amazing conversation with her on the Velocity podcast last year. And she was talking about the kids that it's so hard for them to focus in class. They're running to the lunch counter to beat the other kids so they can
be first
get
in
something
line.
to eat. Yeah.
Yep. It's one of the reasons that we created our Food for Kids backpack program in 2006. There was a hidden problem, and that was that there were children that were not eating over the weekend. Now, these are kids that are receiving free school meals during the week, but we're going home without anything at home to eat. And so we created the backpack program. We started with 50 students. Today, we're at 3,000 students that we're feeding and serving every Friday during the school year. So we're providing a bag or bags of food into the backpack every Friday. These are elementary age kids that a teacher or maybe a school nurse identified as a child not eating over the weekend. Again, the number is big in terms of kids that throughout the county that are food insecure. So we have a ways to go, but it is a program that we grow every year.
How do you deal with the embarrassment, the bullying, the you know, when you're talking about kids, the shame?
Yeah, you mentioned Vanessa. We were in a meeting yesterday, and somebody asked a wonderful question, and you know, whether it's about access or people are not aware of services, and what really is the number one reason people do not utilize your services that need them. You know, one of the things Vanessa pointed out, and I think this is true, is stigma is still a big problem. People are embarrassed. There's pride involved, and so that's part of our messaging. We try to do our best to make sure that people know there's nothing wrong with needing help. In fact, I point out often that our most loyal donors and volunteers are people that have experienced food insecurity in their life.
Sure.
They're now on the other side of it, and because they understand it, because they can give, they're willing to give at this moment. And so we understand we're a food safety net, and we provide emergency food services. Please use those services. And what we want to do is get you back on your feet. And we understand that you may just need us for a short period of time, a couple months, but please use our services.
So do you put some of that early desire to deal with family dynamics to play with what you're doing now? Your early desire to get in there psychologically and help, you know, make family units work smoothly, does that play into your current job?
I think that is part of our responsibility as a food bank, right? To make sure we're providing access, but also making sure people feel comfortable utilizing our services. One thing that we do, and I think this is inherent in our model and our mission, is we partner with over 500 other nonprofit partners. They have feeding programs, and they get their food, some of them most of their food or all their food from us. What's great about that model is these are nonprofits that are soup kitchens, our church pantries, our shelters, but they're in people's neighborhoods. That's another way for families and individuals to feel more comfortable. These might be churches down the street from them that they know or that their friends are utilizing, and they're more comfortable accessing that because they go to that church, or again, their neighbor may go to that church and invited them to come and participate. I think that's another way that we're able to combat that, and again, part of our mission and our responsibility.
That's perfect. Yeah.
That makes complete sense. Now, you say you love competition. You want to know where this is going. Let's see. Fourth largest food bank in the nation. What are the others doing, and how can you become number one?
Well, what's interesting about that, and I'm a little torn because the fact that we're one of the biggest also, I think, signifies that there's a big problem. There are issues, right? But on the other hand, it also means hopefully we're doing a good job of meeting that need. But you point out being the fourth. It's interesting because I looked at those other three.
Okay.
They are not necessarily traditional food banks like we are.
Okay.
I would say we're probably the largest traditional food bank. The other three actually have global programs.
Okay.
So they're not serving a regional, an area. They're serving other countries, including where they're headquartered. And so I would say we're the largest traditional regional independent food bank.
There you go.
The others, so there's the competitor in me, and we did do some research.
I'm sure you can back that up with research.
Yeah.
But a good competitor is going to say he won anyway. So.
Well, that was a great answer, though, because then it does take away the competition. Important. You talked about data and this recent study the San Diego State University did. What were some of the key findings that are kind of steering you right now? Is there anything that you learned that surprised you or that is actionable?
It was a good study. We appreciated, this was SDSU's hospitality and tourism department and program. And we brought them in to conduct this study for two reasons. One, we wanted to gauge overall San Diego Food Bank economic impact. And what was interesting about that is SDSU, when they went out across the country to look at what others had done, they couldn't find another food bank that had ever done a study like that. So it may have been first of its kind. And then the more important reason, the second reason, is we wanted to make sure we understood all the characteristics of our recipients, those receiving food from us, things like why they need to utilize our services, for how long, how often they're utilizing our services, how far are they traveling. So we wanted to look at, we looked at household size, household income. We wanted to make sure we completely understood that. So back to the economic impact, we know that we have an $83 million direct impact in the community because that's the retail value of the food that we distribute.
Wow.
But as we start looking at things like, okay, so if somebody now can reallocate some of those dollars to pay for utilities or rent or healthcare, what does that mean for the economy?
Sure.
Well, that multiplier went as high as 134 million in San Diego County. So we thought that was pretty interesting to look at an overall economic impact that we have with our services. Now, what did we learn in terms of our recipients? Well, we've always said that most of who we serve is the working poor. So now we have a number that's about 73%, so almost three quarters. The other thing we learned, about 60% of our recipients travel 3 miles or less. We would like that percentage to be higher and the distance to be lower. So strategically, we're going to look at working with other nonprofit partners to fill some of those gaps, maybe create some of our own direct distributions, and also maybe utilize our mobile pantry, our vehicles that we can fill up and directly target neighborhoods or areas that are maybe a food desert or have some deficiencies in terms of food availability. The other thing we learned, 76% of recipients are using our services because of inflation, of rising costs specifically. 45% say they don't make enough. So their salaries aren't keeping up with inflation, and 25% are seniors living on a fixed income. So those are things that we really received confirmation, but now we have a more definitive idea and picture of what that looks like for us. So we're going to take that information, and this is why we did it. We wanted to take that information and then strategically look at ways to fill those gaps and better serve the community. And so that's what we're doing, and that's what we're working on now.
And this was done through direct surveys of the community, though, right? This wasn't just picking pockets and creating information. And
16 of our distribution sites placed throughout San Diego County, so we wanted to be equitable in where we were surveying, and over 1,000 respondents and recipients. And, I think it's probably unfair to call it a survey. It was more of an interview, because we had students with SDSU that were actually one-on-one interviewing the respondents so that they would feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think it also ensures the accuracy of the survey. And so it's a rigorous process, and SDSU did a great job. And now we have really good information and data to help us make decisions.
I hate to ask a cliche-ish question.
Well, then don't. No, I'm curious.
Well, I'm hoping you don't call it a cliche question, because I think that the pandemic had to affect the food bank in whether it's positive or negative way. I did read some numbers about how it was affected, but can you tell us about that time period in particular?
That's a good question.
It was a great question. It was a tough period, I think, for everybody.
Yeah.
But certainly for the food bank. But it was also really inspirational too. Tough because we went from serving about 300,000 people to within weeks of the lockdown serving almost 600,000. So nearly doubling. So we had to respond very quickly. That also meant that our employees didn't go home. We stayed working and did the best that we could to meet the demand. It was inspirational because, one, I thought our team, the food bank and team members, are really amazing in their response. But probably even more than that, it was pretty amazing to see the community rally and to see individuals and families and corporations and civic groups and government entities and electeds all really come together to help and to support San Diego County and the region. And so, that was nice to be a part of, everybody working really in the same direction. But then, again, the response was difficult, and it went on for a number of years. So the organization came out of it, and we were tired. And so we had to do things to re-energize, and I think we have. And we learned a lot of lessons, good lessons, bad lessons. And I think we came out of it a better organization. Awesome. And then we're able to better feed people and meet their demands.
Love it.
One of the things I was curious to ask you is about, the whole kind of like the lifespan of food. There's on the sustainability side, I believe the food bank is helping to provide some of the raw materials for a local distillery for bread that can't be sold anymore or given anymore.
Yeah.
And that distillery then makes use of that bread and turns it into a wonderful vodka.
Yeah.
What other types of things are you doing from a sustainability standpoint? Maybe it's food recovery programs. Are you working with either the resorts or the school system to try to, how kids, they'll get their tray, they'll eat the burger, they'll throw the rest away, and there's a perfect package of carrots there. Are you working with other folks to help close the circle there?
Yeah, absolutely. We do all of that. Right now, we do food recovery. I think it was a little under 5 million last year, and we're going to do more than that this year. We're primarily working on the food recovery side with grocery store partners.
Okay.
However, with AB 1383, Tier 2 kicks in January, which will mean restaurants and other similar type of companies.
That's good.
And so then we'll be working more with restaurants and hotels and other companies like that. And we're prepared for that, and it's something we've been working on years to prepare. And that's one of the reasons why the numbers are going to go up. because we're going to have more sources. So we do that. The other thing that we do is, unfortunately, from time to time, stuff does come to us that we can't use because it's well beyond expiration or it's been damaged or whatever. We did create a compost and recycling program many years ago. We were able to divert almost 1.5 million pounds away from the landfill last year, almost everything. And so we recycle what we can, and we will compost what we can as well. And then we donate that compost to farms and local community gardens and other types of entities.
Yeah, excellent.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Rachel Beld, host of Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. Join me as I sit down with Vista's movers, shakers, and changemakers. Let's move Vista forward with Velocity.
This podcast is brought to you by YourInsurancePlace.com. Owning a business is hard work. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into it every single day. You need a partner who understands the ins and outs of insuring small to medium-sized businesses. For over 40 years, our California Property and Casualty Insurance Agency has insured businesses just like yours. We've seen it all, and we've learned a thing or two about what it takes to keep your business protected. That's why we offer free policy assessments. We'll take a look at your policy and let you know if there are any gaps in your coverage. Let us help you to protect what you've worked so hard to build. YourInsurancePlace.com. So piggybacking on the sustainability question, how about for those who are less informed, speaking to the health of the food, quality of the food, right? There might be some folks out there who think that it's all junk food or it's all low quality, goods.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about, the health conversation?
So nutrition is very important to us. We do have a nutrition policy, something we developed over a decade ago. Have a nutritionist on staff. And our goal is to make sure we're distributing healthy and nutritious food. About half of our products are shelf-stable, non-perishable food items. And this year, we're going to increase the percentage of fresh produce, fruits and vegetables that we're distributing. Last year, it was approaching 20 million pounds. This year, it's going to be over 20 million. It is one of our priorities this year to continue to put more fresh fruits and vegetables out into the community. So that's our plan. We're going to do it this year, and it'll remain part of our mission. Is yes, we're not feeding the community empty calories. We're feeding them nutritious food that's energy that they can burn and thrive in whatever it is they're trying to do.
I love it. I think he's on point. I think
I totally agree.
Yeah.
So for somebody watching or listening to this that agrees and says, God, I want to help.
Yeah.
I don't know how, because, just here in my bubble, here in my world. So what is the best way for an individual to help? Is it money? Is it food donations? What do you recommend for somebody that wants to get involved?
We are happy to accept either one, and I would add volunteerism to that.
Yep.
But when it goes back to the money, because of our efficiencies and the network that we use and the ability to utilize wholesalers and also receive donations, large donations from grocery stores, we can really leverage our dollar. So every dollar donated to us and that we spend, we can convert to 2 meals. So know that if you're donating money to us, your donation is going to go a very, very long way. We're always looking for food donations. We host food drives throughout the year. We're just finishing a campaign with Albertsons and Vons where you can buy non-perishable items inside the grocery store and place in our red barrels. Very large food drive. So we're always happy to accept food donations. And then the third thing that I mentioned is we try to make it easy to volunteer as well. We have 2 locations, a warehouse in Miramar, a warehouse in Vista. We generally have 3 volunteer shifts each day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And we have shifts on Saturday as well. These shifts consist of sorting food, bagging produce, building senior boxes, building, Food for Kids backpack bags. I promise you, you won't be sorry when you come away from one of our volunteer shifts.
Yeah. And can someone volunteer as little as a day a week, or is there a minimum?
Yeah, you can come volunteer once. I see volunteers that are in our warehouse 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times a week. Yep, you can choose. Visit our website, SanDiegoFoodBank.org, click on the volunteer tab, and it'll list for the foreseeable future, the next couple months, all of the opportunities. And it usually includes the type of project.
Excellent. A lot of ways to help.
That's amazing. I've been to the Vista location. You graciously hosted an event that we had over there with the Chamber of Commerce. 4 Chamber of Commerce is actually there. And a really successful event. And so we appreciate you hosting. That's where I first met you. And again, you were gracious with your time and joining me today and spreading the word a little bit more. So we really appreciate you and appreciate your time.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. And thank you for helping us get the word out.
Yeah. Thanks for
100%.
all the work you're doing.
Yes.
It's important.
Yes, sir. How can we reach you?
Me?
Yes.
ChrisRyanVideo.com.
Love it.
Easy. Online, easy to remember. And yeah, thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you for being with me.
I wasn't expecting you to
Thank you for
turn to
being with
me for that.
I knew you knew your website.
I was hoping you'd repeat mine.
Well, for somebody, on your website, I assume that all the different ways they can help are all easily found.
Mm-hmm.
Volunteering, but also donating food, donating cash. It's all right there.
SanDiegoFoodBank.org. And then, yes, to donate monetarily, you can click on the Donate Now button. And that'll take you right to the landing page to donate.
Yeah.
I love it.
Good.
Casey Castillo, ladies and gentlemen. Same Business, Different Day podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Follow us at SameBizPod, SameBizPod, and at A Different Day Radio. We'll see you next time.